Okay, we're kind of tapering off here, so I'll go ahead and hop into our webinar. Again, thank you very much. I am Bree Kruder. I'm with ProLink Solutions, and you are joining our Procorem Administrative Tips session. So this is a webinar series we started for Procorem a few months back at the beginning of the summer. And we're going to be focusing on administrative tips for really any users of Procorem, but of course our owner agents and our developers who are working with our state agencies. That's the primary audience that we considered when coming up with today's agenda. There is a chat and Q&A feature in this today's session on Zoom, so please take advantage of that if you have questions. I would love for you to ask for additional help if you have administrative tips and tricks that you're really hoping we cover today and it doesn't appear where you're going to. Please put them in there. If we have time for Q&A at the end, we can possibly even demo some of that for you. So if not, we would follow up with that right after the presentation. We can include some additional resources for you to address those things. So please take advantage of that. So today's agenda, I'm going to do a quick introduction. Then I will cover a Procorem overview before handing it off to Tom Royal for our live demonstration. So Tom is our product manager and has done a lot of work in Procorem during his time with ProLink. So he will be our demo person doing our demo today. I'm Bree Kruder. I'm the executive VP for ProLink. And I am meeting with all of our clients at the agency level with the state agency syndicators and investors that we work with on a monthly basis at least, and working with them on their customer success. And then this session really kind of started our webinar for our Procorem product is something that was inspired out of trainings that we were offering throughout the year on behalf of our agency clients for compliance needs or application intake. And we noticed that there was a desire to have more support and guidance on using Procorem and using our products in general to work with your partners. So that is what inspired this webinar to begin with. If you're not familiar with ProLink, we have been in the affordable housing industry for quite some time now. We were founded in 1998, over 20 years now supporting housing agencies, again, tax credit investors and syndicators and developers. So we build large database systems that those agencies and institutions use to manage their entire portfolios, really focused and tailored towards affordable housing. And then we've developed Procorem and some other tools that have sort of cast out into the market and are serving other parties such as developers and other kind of constituents mainly in the affordable housing industry today. So our goal is to build holistic tools that cover the full life cycle of affordable. So from the origination and just that kind of beginning stages of a plan all the way through construction and final like asset management, going into compliance, even disposition and kind of circling back again. We cover that in our systems and also holistically trying to connect the parties involved. So from a deal lifecycle perspective, we try to build tools and do build tools that kind of cover that, but also building tools that connect all of the parties and bring efficiency to that data transfer. We're all kind of tracking and recording and caring about the same information for different reasons, but we share a lot of the same notes, right? The same information. So as much as we can bring efficiency to that and truth to that, that's what our goal is in the products that we provide this industry. Our team is made up of technologists. We are a software company, but we have quite a few who have been with us for a long time and have great background and understanding of the very complex affordable housing industry that we all work in. So this webinar series Just so you know, in case you decide to join us again in the future, we will be providing educational resources for Procorem pretty regularly. We may also incorporate some industry news or maybe even examples of projects that have taken place between different groups and the partners and agencies we work with, just to provide a discussion at the industry level. So that is what you can expect in the future with these sessions. Typically, you'll see a business presenter, which I'm kind of filling for this session, and then a technical presenter like Tom, who would demonstrate anything related to our products. And it is a reoccurring event that we're doing monthly. The season is usually February through October, and then we take November and December and January for holidays and planning for the new year. And again, that you guys are our audience: developers, property managers, owner agents, state agencies, anyone using Procorem. This would be a really good session. Anyone collaborating through Procorem, this would be a good session to join. A little bit of a picture of ProLink's reach across the affordable housing industry. So we work with 19 state agency customers. This is just our state agency HFAs. We have 17 HFAs and 2 supportive services agencies we work with. So you can see across the map. One thing I would love for you to answer, since this is a newer series and we're learning our audience as we host these, is if you can share what states you're doing work in, what state you might be affiliated with or agency you're working with, and what your role is. If you're a developer, if you're an agent, if you're an owner, that would be really wonderful information for us to know so that we can tailor our content in the future to those who are tuning in. So if you can just post that in the chat for us, I would so appreciate it. And thank you again for being here. Okay, so then going through Procorem, quick overview. So Procorem is one piece of a suite of products that ProLink offers. And it is always paired with the larger kind of in-house database system that our clients are using. So Procorem is something that we provide as a third-party collaborative portal and really a platform to our syndicator clients who are using our database connected with Procorem as well, and also with our state agency clients. We have about 19,000 affordable housing industry professionals who are actively using Procorem. So that means they're logging in and on a periodic basis to do something on Procorem. So fairly large audience now over the years, and that continues to grow with especially with every agency that we work with, because then their procedures kind of start to involve Procorem throughout the seasonality of their projects. So it is a collaborative platform built for the affordable housing industry. That was where I was focused on affordable when we started with Procorem, and it has not stopped. It is a flexible tool. So while it is collaborative, there's some pretty basic features to it. When you log in, or when you're invited by a state agency, for example, you are going to be invited into a work center, and your work center is representing your project or your deal that you're working on with that agency. And within every work center, you're going to see consistency with the options kind of surrounding this work center. You can see here. So we have emails, which means that you can put posts out, or really any activity out on Procorem, and you're going to get notifications that can be managed, but you get those through email directly to you. Posts are kind of like on social media. When you make a post or a comment on something, it's something that anybody else in the work center that you're in can see that post, and it notifies them by email. And when you see that post in your email, you can actually respond to that email, and it will post right back up to that work center. So you don't even necessarily have to go into Procorem to respond to that post. We have a calendar feature that you'll see on the left-hand panel within work centers, and that is populated by tasks. So task is a very powerful feature that our clients will use to help manage deadlines or big deliverables involved in the projects. And that calendar is populated with the duration periods of those tasks. So it's not the same as appointments in Outlook, it's durations of tasks that populate that calendar. And then finally, we have our documents. That feature within Procorem is where you can provide information. You're going to be getting a lot of information from the agencies you're working with. That's where they'll put their standard forms and templates and anything that may be required for your review. And it's where you're going to be uploading or providing new versions, depending on what stage of the project you're in, or if you're in asset management, maybe where you're submitting certain information throughout the year. So Tom will be covering some demos related to document management and version control as part of today's session. And just another good picture before we get started. So this is typically just illustrating how our agency clients, our enterprise clients, are using Procorem. You can see ProLink HFA represented here. That's the database tool that our agencies use, basically their holy grail of data, which is pushed. That data comes from Procorem. So Procorem is, we like to look at it as the messy relationship room, the deal room where things are being gathered and there's a lot of going back and forth that's visible to everybody within that work center. As people come into a deal or leave, none of that history is lost in somebody else's email. It's all right there. So there's developers, contractors, property managers, all kinds of people who are logging in at different stages to work on Procorem. The agencies then have control measures to push and pull data into Procorem and populate their database to then do their reporting, asset management, and compliance. So that is how it works. Here's just a few of the basic features and uses we wanted to list out. So typically, if you're new to Procorem or expecting, we have a couple new agencies that are going to be rolling out Procorem soon. So if you happen to be from one of those states, you'll often see our agencies adopt it for application submission is huge. So electronic application submission, tenant event submission is another large one. Compliance requirements. Third-party services sometimes is managed there as well, and then gap financing. So we do offer Procorem Marketplace, which is a feature that ProLink has developed to help connect developers with gap financing through some of the financial partners that we've acquired over the years in affordable. So that's just kind of a way for us to help make affordable a little bit easier to those who might be looking for some gap financing options. And then the left side with features just includes kind of a list. Like I said earlier, Procorem started out really focused on providing a platform for collaboration with our agency clients, but since then it has been adopted by a lot of different developers using it internally to manage their business in collaboration with their parties as well. So it's a pretty flexible tool. I know that we have a huge roadmap for future enhancements we're planning for Procorem and hope to see come to fruition to make even more connection between our third parties or those who are working with the agencies and agencies Procorem accounts. So there could be a lot to be gained there over time to make this process easier for everybody, right? And manage our data with integrity and efficiency. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tom to start our demonstration.
Okay, thanks, Bree. We'll go ahead and get started. And bring up Procorem. Okay, so I've got a number of different items that we're going to walk through today. And what we're going to be kind of focusing on are some items that were sent ahead of time. So thank you to those that went ahead and sent in some questions and things on how to use certain areas of Procorem. So got a few questions that we're going to go through, different things I'm going to highlight. But I'll say, if there's something that kind of you got a specific question, feel free to drop it into the chat as we go through this. And if we have time at the end, we'll kind of go through some of those questions and highlight some other things in Procorem. So the first item that I'm going to start on is actually how do you handle name changes in Procorum? So this is something that we're asked fairly frequently. And all your name information, other demographic information is actually stored up here in your profile. So I'm logged in as a demo user. And once you've logged into Procorum, up in the top right, you're going to see your picture if you have one and your name. And if you click that little menu, you're going to have the ability to navigate to a couple things, but we're going to go to Profile. So in the profile, you can update your name. You can change it, first name, last name, any information that you want to put here. The one thing you cannot change is your email, and I'm actually going to cover that next on how you would do an email change if you needed to. But one thing I did want to point out is that along with your name in here, you actually have some other information that you can track as well. And we do encourage everyone to input your information as far as your address, city, state, zip, any information that you would want to put in here that could be useful for those that you're collaborating with in Procorum to get in touch with you. Also, it's a good idea to kind of put some information in there about who you are, who you work with, what company that you're with. So that that's good information for everybody to have as well, for those that you're collaborating with and for us ProLinks. So like the question that we asked a little bit ago, where are you from, what areas are you working in, that information, if you included that in here as well, that'll help us kind of further enhance Procorum and kind of let us better understand our user base of those that are using Procorum. A couple other things in here in the profile that may not know about is, for example, your picture. If you wanted to have a picture in here, you can upload a picture, change your picture. Invites. Sometimes we'll get emails that saying, I know someone invited me, but I didn't get the email invitation. You can actually navigate to your profile at any time, look at those invites, and see if you've got any invitations out here. I sent myself one a little bit ago, so I'm going to go ahead and accept that one, because that's an account I'm going to need to get to shortly. Password. You can change your password at any time. So whenever you're using Procorum, you can go to your profile and password and just put in your current password and new password with a password confirmation. Preferences. If you've ever feel like you get too many emails coming out from Procorum and you want to maybe tailor those emails a little bit, you do have some options in here in preferences on, do you want immediate email notifications? Do you just want, turn the emails off? And as well as you have some information about like how frequently do you want to get digest emails. If you get those daily digests, they'll let you know of all the different changes. You can also do that at the individual account level. So if you are tied to multiple accounts, and I'm going to be spending a little bit more time talking about how, can you see what accounts that you're, integrated with, you could set it for one account as, versus others as far as your email preferences. And then finally, background processes. You don't really have to look at this too often, but these will track, like if you created any work centers and you're importing a template, anything that's going to take some time, you can kind of see how those things are going. Okay, so that should cover, changing your profile information as far as username and password. So next would be email address. So you're not able to change your email address, but we at ProLink can actually update an email for you. Now, one thing that I want to point out with that is that let's say your email address is going to change. What we see happen sometimes is some people will just create a new collaborator record for themselves with that new email address. That's not ideal. You can do that. However, if you want to retain all of the work centers that you have attached to you, all of your history and activity, our recommendation is to do that email change. Again, you can request us to change that email for you. There is a support link down at the bottom that if you click on that, it's got a nice little form that's going to pop up. And actually that didn't work, but it usually pops it up within the window here. And you could put in your information, just say, hey, my old email address is this, and my new email address is going to be whatever your new email address is going to be. And then we can make that change for you. Whenever we do an email address, it does require that you have to change your password, but it generates an email and you get a link and you can go in and reset your password, do all that securely. So we can change email addresses, something to keep in mind. All right. Next question I'm going to focus on is how to handle collaborators on work centers. So say like you've got a work center that's underway, you're working in there and you have the ability to, invite other people into the collaborator space for this work center. Sometimes, you may have a collaborator that you need to replace. So we're replacing a collaborator. There's no actual replace option in here that does that. But typically the process is pretty simple. All you're going to do is actually add your new collaborator. So in this case, if I'm going to add in an architect, I can add in a whole new person. Yeah. And in this case, it's totally new. And we'll just make somebody up. Give them a role that you want them to be working in your workspace, and then add. Once your collaborator's added, you can then go in and remove your other collaborator that you want to replace. Simple process for that. You're just going to click on their name. And again, if you have the permissions to do so, you can remove them from the work center. I am going to spend a little bit more time talking about permissions as well here shortly. So I'm going to remove them. And now that we've essentially replaced the architect role with a new collaborator. Now, if you had any tasks in here that were assigned to the architect role, it actually will, when this new Fred comes in as the architect, he would inherit those tasks if it's assigned to that role. Okay. Next is how to manage different roles from a Procorem collaborator. And that's going to be for, let's see, across multiple work centers. So here we can do this for, at an individual work center level. But let's say that that you're working with, Zane Gray or Fred Hall on a bunch of different work centers, and you want to do that in bulk. So by clicking on different links up here in the breadcrumbs. So this second menu item here, the second breadcrumb is always going to be the account that you're working in. So if I click on that, I can go to this housing finance agency account. You can also navigate to that from the home page. If you have permission set up for the account, you'll see account admin options down here below. So under the account admin and people and permissions, you can navigate to any user, member, guest within here. And so in this case, I think I had him as a guest. And in there, you can see the list of all the work centers that they're actually assigned to. So if you've got a number of different work centers in here, we already moved them from the other one, but each work center, you can independently go in and change the role that they're assigned to for that work center. Okay, so next item that we've got in the list is how to manage and view projects across multiple accounts. So we're already into one account, but sometimes you may have been given access to different agencies, different Procorem accounts, and you're going to have work centers and multiple accounts, and sometimes it gets a little confusing. And how do you keep that all straight? So a couple of things that make that a little bit easier. On the home screen, the navigation on the left is going to be broken down by account. So with this login that I've created, I'm in the Housing Finance Agency account. Also, I'm in the Procorem by ProLink Solutions account. And each of those accounts are going to have those work centers that are underneath it. We also have the ability to navigate to your accounts through that left menu as well. So you can see my accounts. Things like my tasks and favorites actually aggregate across all accounts. So tasks will be tasks that you have on work centers across every center, all the accounts that you have access to. So in this case, if I go to one of my work centers, again, like Bimini Bay Apartments, I could have a task in here, I can do my work. But if I'm like need to kind of like remind myself, what account am I in? A couple of things will point that out for me. First of all, if the account has a logo or if they've added that information, you're going to see that up here in the top left. And then again, these breadcrumbs up here are also going to always be home, what account you're working in, and then the work center that you're working in. I know sometimes we don't have rules in place for work center names, so you could have a work center name that's the same in one count or the other. So just a couple of little helpful tips to kind of really make sure that you know what account that you're working in at that point in time. Okay. Next is how to manage the security settings. And this is if you have the permission to do so. So again, in the accounts that you have access to, you can navigate to that account either through the menu over here. You can click and go to the account, and this is going to give you access to those account permissions. So managing people within the account is always going to be under that People and Permissions tab. And again, this is going to take you to all the different individuals that are in that account, with their permissions that are set. Clicking on an individual's name, you're going to see their profile. You can actually see their preferences. One thing that I want to point out here is in the preferences, you can set their security role as well as their default role. So the security role has a couple of different options in here. You've got, their non-admin, a user administrator, work center administrator, and account administrator. There are some key differences between what those roles can do. In the help documentation, we can have a nice little graphic in here, and that's also referenced in this people and permissions area and the help as well. You can get to the help anytime in Procorem. We have a link in there, or it's help.procorem.com. But you'll see here as part of those roles, non-admins, they can create work centers, but that's it. Work center admins can create and manage work centers. And by manage, that means, they can archive work centers, they can make changes to them. The user admin can create work centers and manage users, but they're going to be inherit any other permissions that are going to be restricted by the work center role that they're in for that work center. And then the account admin, they can do everything. So if you have access to do so, you can set, again, that security role as well as the default role. The default role is, let's say you create a new work center for a new project. What role do you want this person to be by default when you add them to that work center? This will get missed sometimes. So, we've seen it happen where, like, you create a work center and you got to change their role. You create a work center, you have to change their role. If they're always going to be like a developer, they're always going to be a certain role in there, you can set the default here. And then the next time you create that work center, add them as a collaborator, it's going to default to that role. You can change that role once the work center is created. You can change a role for a collaborator anytime within a work center. And again, as we pointed out before, you can see, here's a good example of someone who's on a whole bunch of work centers. We can see what role they are in each of those. And you can, easily see, what's their status, have they accessed it, is their invitation waiting, or, what role are they within that work center. You can also bulk add to work centers here as well. If I click add to work center, I can pull up a list. Here's all the ones I want to add them to, or do a bulk remove. We saw previously that I did a remove an individual from one work center, but you can do a bulk remove from work centers here as well. Okay, so that takes us through the security roles. And then the last thing that I want to spend a little bit of time on is talking about, I had questions about document versions and file versions. So again, Procorem is a collaborative workspace. And one of the things that we most commonly see, with people using Procorem is files. So files is the most heavily used area of Procorem. And, you can add files, organize files by folders, and that, pretty easy to use, pretty easy to set up. But one thing that not everyone knows about is we have the ability to track versions of files within Procorem. So I have a document out here for project financials, And with this one, if you click on the details for any file in Procorem, you have the ability to check to see what versions are already in place. Whenever you upload a file for the first time, it's going to create one version of that file. And in this case, I've already added a second version of the file. When looking at the versions, you have the option of downloading any historical versions from the past, restoring those file versions so that you can, make an old version the most current version. So maybe somebody, uploads a version that's incorrect or it's an older version. Procorem actually does a very good job of keeping every version of a file over time. So you have access to those. So then the question, that we often get, well, how do you add a version and how do you manage versions in here? Adding versions in Procorem really can be done by two different ways. So the first way that we see kind of commonly is that if you upload a file, for example, within a work center, and the file name is the exact same file name as a file that's already in place in that folder, it will automatically create another version of that file. So if we look at this in action, if I go in here and I upload files, I'll go over to a sample, this project financial files again. And again, if I, as long as that file name is the same as the one that's already in there, and I click upload, it's going to match up that file name to the file that already exists in the folder. And when I navigate over to this file now, we should have 3 versions. So looking at our versions tab, we can see that we've got the one that I originally uploaded, a second one that I uploaded, and then the one that I just uploaded now. Well, let's say I made a mistake. This is, not the one that I originally had. I want to make this one version 1 to my original version. I can click restore. And what it's going to do now, it's actually going to create a 4th version of the file, which is an exact duplicate of our original version that was down below. So this will give, pretty powerful tool for, managing different versions of files, looking at, file history, going back in time. So you can see that, which different versions of which files have taken place over time. So something, maybe especially like a collaborative document where different things are being added to, you're sharing it with people, they're adding more information. The recommendation is to, keep those versions and use versioning to support that. And it kind of keeps you from having to remember to rename a file, put version 1, version 2. You can also delete versions. Again, that version 3, I know that was a bad one. I can go out and delete it. And then it's going to remove it. And if you made a mistake, you actually have the option of clicking here and restoring that version back again. So pretty good capability there for that. And I showed how, we had that version out there for the original file. So if I uploaded the file with the file name, but you can also upload new versions directly through here. So maybe I can go over to, let's see, my document. I'll get my original file in there, and I'm actually going to name it something different because when you upload the version from here, it doesn't actually have to be exactly the same name. So we'll get into here. I'm going to name it Project Financials 2. And here's my Project Financials 2 document. So now we have a what would be kind of the 5th version of this document now. Again, I didn't have to name it the same name. It's going to keep different, those versions of the file. The original name of the document is always going to be the project financials.xlsx because that was a different one that came in here. But you can actually go in and change that file name if you want it to be something else. So you could be, final. And again, you know, it's always going to keep those different versions. Now, at any point in time, if it becomes confusing, you want to kind of see what was the history for this file. We have this activities tab that will show like every single version that was, you know, uploaded, when things were changed, what was changed along the way. Okay. So that's an overview, just kind of all the different things that we commonly see with Procorem. So just check, make sure I've covered all of the questions. And I'll say, you know, another thing that I wanted to point out was that at any point in time, if you do get stuck, any point in time you're using Procorem, if you're not sure how to do something, not how sure to use a different thing, we do have that help link again. You know, it's typically in the menu item up here, or you can get to, you know, help.procorem.com. And for example, here's some help about the task details, usually some simple information, but clicking that Procorem Help Center will take you over to the help site. A lot of good information here, lets you navigate or search by specific topics. So if I was looking for file versions, you know, there's a number of different options for, you know, how file versions work, how they work with templates, things like that. So, you know, always good idea to check the help documentation if you get stuck, or you can click the support button, you know, send us a support request, and we'll help you out as well.
Awesome.
So that's it.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate your help with that. I'm going to just put us on our last slide before we close out for today. So thank you again for joining. We really appreciate your attendance today. We will release our next topic probably a couple weeks out from our next event, so stay tuned for that. And if you have any feedback that you want to take the next 30 seconds to provide us, please do so in the chat if there's specific information that you're looking for us to cover. Again, we want to make this as helpful as possible to you. So please share that with us. We'd be happy to take it into consideration for the next time that we host a webinar or reach out to you to address it separately. So appreciate it. Please let us know how we can help you in the future. Have a good one, everybody.